here is the rest of the story on my SL8. So I did a video, gave the overview, listed the specs, things like that, said I really liked it, said it was a great bike. Well, here's the rest of the story. There is a great big but with this bike. This is my prior bike, 2019 Specialized Venge. It is a Pro model. The 2019 Venge came out in August of 2018. As soon as the specs were announced, I said, well, that's really rad. I was riding a giant TCR Pro 1 disc at the time, and I decided I wanted an Aero bike. Specs came out on this, asked my shop to order me one. They got me a good deal. They got one coming, it showed up, and 2 weeks later, had it ready to go. So that was August 2018, somewhere in there. And September 1st, 2018, I crashed it and put myself in the ICU. Blew up the wheels, broke a shifter, frame didn't have a mark on it. Had it all checked out, everything looked good, couldn't find any issues. Replaced the wheels, replaced the shifter, and been riding it ever since, until I got the SL8. A few things about the Venge Pro. This wasn't white. It was known. It was known, but Specialized didn't advertise this. The Pro frame, the whole frame set was identical to the S-Works. So fork, bar, stem, seat post, all identical to the S-Works. The only difference was that you got Roval CL50 wheels instead of Roval CLX 64 wheels, and you got Ultegra instead of Dura Ace, and you got a Power Pro saddle instead of an S-Works Power saddle. So at any point, if you wanted to, you could upgrade your components and have the full S-Works level build on the Venge. On most of the Specialized bikes, they did a different level of carbon for S-Works, and then everything below was usually something else. So a lot of their bikes were like a 10R or 11R carbon on the S-Works, and then or 11R on the S-Works, and then a 10R on everything else. Where on the Venge, even the S-Works bike was their 10R carbon. And this one says 10R on it. They were the same frame set. And so it was in some ways it was the bargain, because you could upgrade to S-Works if you ever felt like it down the road. That wasn't the same how the Tarmac worked at the time, and that is not how this Tarmac works. There is a difference between the S-Works frame and everything below that. So that was just one of the key things about the Venge that I thought was important. I got an Aero bike. I am light. I typically ride, a lot of races. I was showing up around 62.5 kilos, 137 pounds, somewhere in there. And so while my watts per kilo looked pretty good, I would get hurt in the flats. Be big guys out in the flats, putting down 300 watts, and I'm having to be above threshold just to sit in the draft at times, things like that. So it was always more dangerous for me in the draft, like in the flats, than it was climbing. So I've tried to kind of strengthen my weaknesses by going with the Aero bike. I got the Aero bike, got the Aero helmet, learned to ride really tucked in, learned to just be super efficient in a pack, and it made a big difference. There was a notable difference. Going downhill, because I'm not heavy, I would get dropped on downhills in races. The Venge made a notable difference on that. It was just something I noticed. So I knew it was a little heavier than some of the options out there, but I never really worried about that because I wasn't getting dropped on big, long, sustained climbs where the lighter bike may pay off. I was always getting hurt in the flats, things like that. So I went Aero bike. I was all in on that. So as you know, like the new SL7 came out, they were still showing that it was a little bit slower in the flats than the Venge. So it didn't really ever tempt me, even though it was lighter weight. So SL8 came out, and that was the first time then that Specialized said, hey, the Tarmac is now faster than the Venge. So that's what I bid on. It's like, okay, it's now just as aero as the Venge, potentially more aero, and lighter. So that was the piece of the marketing that I kind of bid on. Was like, okay, now I'm not giving up my aero advantages that I got from the Venge while also dropping weight. And then I figured, well, if I'm going to buy this new fancy Aero SL8, I might as well be my dream bike kind of thing. So I wanted the color of the ready to paint frame. I apologize for the background. It's kind of busy, which ruins the lines of the bikes. I had everything kind of set up in front of the garage doors, and then that made it so that it was just too dark over there. So here we are. Apologize for that. But so I got the ready to paint frame. The Specialized advertised the ready to paint frame at 685 grams. You had to read the fine print on that. That was without derailleur hanger, cage bolts. I think it was even like the front derailleur mount. You know, it was totally stripped frame to weigh 685. I got this on my scale. This ready to paint frame in a size 54 weighed 708 grams. The Venge frame was listed at 960. So you got like a 260 gram difference, 250 something gram difference. You know, that's a little over half pound in just frame weight. So in theory, you should only have like half a pound, 250 gram difference in total final build weight if you built everything identical. So currently, the Tarmac ready to ride, bottle cages, pedals, computer mount, weighed 7.05 kilograms. On the same day, same scale, the Venge weighed 7.85 kilograms. The wheels on the Venge, the Roval CL50s with 26 millimeter tires, are slightly lighter than the NVs on the SL8. So it's actually gaining a little bit of advantage with the Rovals on the Venge. So if I was going to go climbing, I'd maybe want to put the Roval wheels on this. You know, then we come down to rolling resistance, various things. Are the wheels enough more aero to make the climbing differences? You know, to depend on the exact climb, how steep it was, stuff like that. But the front wheel rotor rim combo, tire combo on this is actually 100 grams lighter than set up over here on the SL8. Rear wheels only came in like 30 grams difference, so I'm not sure where, I don't know if rear hub is heavy, because I should be making up weight both on the tire there compared to the 28 millimeter GP5000, and that rim is a little bit lighter than the NV rim, so I don't know if it's then the hub itself ends up heavy. We'll give a couple other specs on the Venge. Venge was upgraded with Dura Ace rotors front and rear and a Dura Ace cassette. So there's that. Mostly because the Dura Ace rotors look cooler than the Ultegra rotors that came with it. They had the black on the Dura Ace rotors, made it look a little cooler. And at some point I needed to upgrade the cassette, and I went ahead and bought a Dura Ace. So it lost a little weight that way. My only complaint on the Venge, essentially the entire time I owned it, was the 42 millimeter bar. And I searched and searched, long time, looking for a narrower bar, and they were never in stock. I could probably find one now that nobody else is looking for this bar. But I did always want to go narrower, but I didn't want to spend $400 or whatever they were costing. It seemed like they were a stupid amount of money. I didn't want to spend the money on another bar, and I always just rode it, but it never did feel right to me. And so when I built the SL8, I did go to a 38 centimeter bar, and it is so much more comfortable for my narrow shoulder width. They redesigned everything right in here. There is just enough more flare and enough more that this is rounded off that you don't hit your wrists right here anymore. The way this was shaped, when you sprinted, your wrists would hit right here. Like, I would finish a race, and the next day I'd have bruises on my wrist, and it would always take me a minute to figure out what it was. And I'd remember, oh yeah, I sprinted yesterday, and I'd try to get my arms out wide, things like that. But just for my natural fit, my wrists always bashed right there, and it doesn't happen on here. So I got the 38 centimeter bars, and that made a big comfort difference. So while I do like, the fit of the SL8, and I've been able to get it be a little more comfortable just because of the bar width, there is no real other identifiable difference. So complete weight, I think I said this one, 7.05. The Venge, 7.85. So that's 17 pounds, 5 ounces on the Venge, 15 pounds, 11 ounces on the SL8. At the time, there were lots of different sources. I never had one to weigh, but magazines were weighing these complete build with the Dura Ace setup at 7.2 kilos. So really within margin of error not margin of error, but super close to like where I've ended up at with this. So potentially Dura Ace build on the Venge is going to end up weighing about the same. When I first got the SL8, I didn't have my NV wheels yet, so I put it together with these wheels. So these wheels, tires, so it's the same wheels and tires I've always ridden. And I went out and I took my first ride, and everybody had talked about how comfortable and compliant the SL8 is and all these things. I couldn't tell a difference. SL8 versus the Venge on same wheels and tires, I could not tell a difference. It rode the same. I'd hit bumps. I would go back and forth trying to hit the bumps in my neighborhood. I'd hit potholes. There are these expansion joints. I'm purposely trying to hit them, trying to decide, okay, what is there a difference? With the same wheels and tires, no difference. Tour Magazine has tested this at 209 watts. Tour Magazine's independent testing put the Venge at 208 watts. So despite Specialized's claim, it's possible the Venge is still faster. I would be lying if I said I could tell any difference in the Aero capabilities, other than I don't notice the sailing effect on this quite as much as I have on the Venge. Now, some of that is I haven't been out in the same conditions. I may not have just hit the right conditions, but all those deeper tube shapes, in theory, should offer a little bit more of that sailing effect, and there are definitely times in crosswinds where I have felt the sailing effect of that bike, that it is flying. And I haven't come across that exact scenario here. So the big thing there, so then I got the NVs. I got the NV wheels, I put it on there, and it was like, holy smokes. Now these are good. I noticed the difference. I went from the 26 millimeter tires just because that's what was supposedly the most Aero combo with those wheels. It's what I'd always run. At points, I did have 28s one year just because 26s weren't in stock for some reason. So I did ride on 28s one year. But I got the 28 mil GP5000s. I got the NVs. So then what is considered the ideal pressure from like the Silka calculator or the Schramm's calculator, came out, a little lower, so you can run lower pressures. Then I noticed a difference. Like, oh, this is super comfy. But when I put those wheels on the Venge, it feels the same. So Chris Miller on the Aero Show podcast with Chris Miller Cycling, they've said a bunch of times that they feel like the wheels and the tires are the bigger thing than the frame set and all of that, because you can dial in your compliance and your feel with your wheels and tires. I 100% feel like that is the case here. That I could have saved myself the $5,500 that frame cost, put those wheels and tires on the Venge, and I think that would have been the way to go. By the one piece bar, that's going to save some weight over what's on the Venge. Buy myself the new Dura Ace group set, put it on the Venge, the NV wheels, save the $5,500 frame set, and I think I would have had just as good of a bike. There is no distinct difference between the Venge and the SL8 in overall feel. Segments I've ridden at, not going any faster. As soon as I put the NV wheels on, I was going faster. There is like a half a mile per hour. So at right around 20 miles an hour, there is a half a mile per hour there with those wheels and tires compared to the Roval wheels and tires. Somewhere in that, maybe even a tiny bit more. Like there's a notable difference. Now these are not the new Roval Rapides that are coming with a current SL8, so I can't compare that. But my older Rovals compared to the NV 4.5s, these are the faster wheel, but that is not the faster frame set, and it is not necessarily the faster or more comfortable frame set. I'm sure it might test that way. I can take 10 PSI out of my tires or add 10 PSI to my tires, and I can feel that difference. But everything else identical, I don't feel the difference. So it's not just some clod that can't tell the difference. It's just we're getting down to such fine little differences that it doesn't really matter. The Venge, looks are subjective. I didn't love the looks of the SL8 from the front. I don't love the front end. Right from the start, I was like, I don't know. It has grown on me. I think it almost looked better with like some lightweight climbing wheels because it's got the narrower tubes, things like that, the narrow seat stays. Like it may look really good with some lightweight climbing wheels, where the Venge looks great with deep wheels. Like a set of like NV 6.7s on this thing. But the deep tube shapes look better. The front end looks better. They sculpted a few things a little more on the Venge. So the Venge has this little kind of line right here sculpted in. It just makes it look kind of fast, the way they sculpted this here. And then all of this was done super nice, that this is all formed in, that this piece flows together here. It's much nicer looking than what they did here. This gap ended up bigger here. You can see daylight between there, and this just isn't nearly as finished looking as what they did with the Venge. The overall, the fork, the fork's quite a bit wider down here in this section. It ends up the same as the SL8 up here. The seat stays a little bigger. And I'm sure at a very small level, there is some compliance difference, but it is not enough that it matters. It's got the same seat wedge. This one did come with a little cover. The Venge didn't. Or if it did, no one ever put it on there. I don't know. I built the SL8 myself. I did not build the Venge. I picked it up from my shop in Pocatello, Idaho, put together like that. But So if you have a Venge and you're like, man, I really want to be like the cool kids, all my friends that have the SL8, I'm not certain that it's worth it, because you can build this Venge down to be pretty light. And if you wanted to get crazy with some like carbon tie rotors and chain rings, you could probably take the Venge all the way down to 6.8. Or you get like some of the new ultralight wheels. If you wanted to go hill climbing on it, get some of the new ultralight wheels that are out there that are weigh 11 or 1200 grams. None of these are lightweight wheels. The NV 4.5s are about 1450 grams. And with 28 millimeter tires, it's not exactly a lightweight combo. So I could definitely drop this below 6.8 with just wheel and tire swap. But there's, I get on it and I do like riding it just because it's super comfy with the new bar and stem. But if I had known everything beforehand, it may have changed some of my thoughts that save my money. In this case, I still have the Venge because I have a son who now, over in the year between like buying that frame and getting everything, and then this point, I put together the SL8. My first ride on it was January 27th of last year. So right around the 1 year mark. And it's been good, but I'm not sure it would have gone that way. I could have saved the money, bought my son a different road bike. But in this case, he inherited the Venge, kind of. He says he hates the road bike. He doesn't like riding on the road all that much anyway, so we'll see. But it's good training. He's out on his mountain bike right now. So kind of just final thoughts. Generally mostly wrapped it up. There was something else I was going to say. I got to get this last parting thought coming together here. Maybe I'll edit this part out. Maybe not. We'll see. But I did have one last thought that I was supposed to put in here. It's not on my notes. I did a big long descent. There is a segment near here, Bogus Basin Road. If you go all the way from kind of the bottom to the top, the very top lodge, you get about 4,000 feet of climbing over 17 miles. And there's a segment that runs from the bottom to the top and to the bottom again. So you got climb fast, descend fast. Windy mountain road. I got what I thought was great conditions, and absolutely ripped that downhill on the SL8. My climb, I just didn't quite have the same conditioning. So my climb was a little bit slower, a few minutes slower. So even though I had the new lightweight bike, climb ended up a few minutes slower than the Venge. And then I absolutely ripped that downhill. I thought that I was like, yeah, I'm flying. And it was not a PR. I missed it by about a minute, something like that. It's a 30-ish minute segment, and I was about a minute slower, 45 seconds. I can't remember the exact number. So, is that the extra Aero of the Venge? Was that just that, despite the fact that I thought I was absolutely ripping that descent, I was just being more of a wiener that day? I don't know. But we're talking that the differences here are all so slight that for most riders it's not going to matter. And the feel is great. I don't remember the final thought. It was also, from a comfort standpoint, kind of my A race last few years, I've brought this up lots of times, is the Lotaja road race. So I've raced Lotaja one time on my Tarmac, 2017. In 2018, I was in the ICU during Lotaja. or I just got out of the ICU, but ended up in the ICU, so didn't race. I would have been on this bike for its first go, and it didn't happen. So 2019 was the first go on this, and then put it on a podium in the Cat 3-4 race in 2020. 2021, it rained and poured and nasty cold. I had hypothermia and got dropped out of the lead group because I couldn't even pedal my bike. I was so cold. 2022, I then won Lotaja on this bike and had the 6th fastest time of the day, seventh fastest time of the day, behind 6 of the pros. 2023, had another great ride on this, but just wasn't quite my year. Not feeling it. Had spent too much time mountain biking, wasn't in condition. Blew myself up during the Boise Trails Challenge and never recovered. And then 2024, I rode this bike here. So back to the SL8. So it's a 202-mile race. You get climbing, you get descending, you get flats, all that. I wasn't any less beat up at the end of the day on the SL8. I can't say that I was. I was in the lead group on this. I had some PRs on segments. That was mostly just because the group I was with was going fast. Like we were pushing hard. So I had segment PRs, but it was just because the group I was with was flying. But I flatted out of the lead group and ended up finishing 10th in my group. Rode the most of the way back in, or not most of the way, rode a lot of the way back in solo. And a couple other guys from my group caught me, and then I out sprinted them for 10th place. So, I have done a lot of 200-mile, 9-hour road races on the Venge, and it's not like it beats you up. It's not any more harsh. The Venge with the MB 4.5s and some 28 or 30 mil tires, I think it'd be just as good. There is clearance for up to 32 millimeter tires on that. I'm not sure that I officially listed as 32, but I actually put 32 millimeter cross tires on this for a gravel race one time and raced it in a gravel race. I wanted a little quicker handling and kind of lighter bike than what my actual gravel bike did. It was a very non-technical gravel race. So I put some super low profile cross tires on that, fit them on there, but it'll comfortably fit 30s. So, put the NV wheels on there, fit some 30s. There you have it. I don't think the SL8 is better than the Venge. Changed my mind.